Hi everyone, Josh here. So tonight I want to talk about villains and creating really juicy, memorable villains, or looking at villains that are already in campaigns and then making them really juicy and really memorable. So, first thing about a villain is they should have a couple features that stand out about them, like a caricature that if you could only pick three or four things that would very clearly define them. One of my favorites was not mine. I've never used him. I've just heard about him. He was created by Matt Colville, and the name, or maybe he wasn't even created, but Matt Colville is a really great way of playing him. And his name is Calrol the Vile. And Calrol the Vile is this tall, gaunt, red-robed wizard who, this is all stuff that I've kind of done in my own imagination, who is completely emotionless and driven. He is driven to raise Orcus, the demon lord of the undead, into the material realm. And the way that he does this is by scattering these pieces of red gold. And whenever someone has a piece of red gold and another person near them dies, Calrol the Vile appears and collects the bodies. And he takes the bodies back to his tower. And his tower, which is far out in the forest, the players will eventually notice, is growing. It's being fed the bodies that Calrol is bringing back to it. So he has a couple of really distinct features. He's also powerful enough that the party is not just going to be able to wipe him out really quickly. So he has this there's a good power dynamic. And power dynamics with villains are always, that is a huge factor, is how powerful is this villain? How strong is the party going to have to be to take out this villain and their entourage, essentially? That's really going to be the question of the campaign, if you set up a villain who's, tough. Villains can be tough in other ways, though. There's a really cool villain from Out of the Abyss called Droki, D-R-O-K-I. And he's what's called a Darrow, and they're these, tiny, feral little race that live beneath the Dwergar in their society. They live in an under-society there. They're basically, homeless, put in shanty towns. They're all violent, chittering, and mad. They're completely untrusting, full of hatred. They're thieves, they're rioters, and they're usually used as slaves or chattel, or frontline infantry in war. They are just completely unreliable, except for their leaders, who are these, they're called savants, and they're exceptionally brilliant, and they run the society and manipulate all the people down below them so that they live in opulence while their people live in squalor. So Droki is a Darrow, and he comes from this society, and the players are attempting to chase him down because he has, he is a runner for a gang that the players want to bring down for the Dwergar to solidify them as allies. So he's a runner for this gang, so he carries really useful information, so it's important to get him. He can also do things like steal stuff from the party, or generally just cause mischief on their behalf. Just do things to get them in trouble with the law. The thing about him is he has boots of speed, and he knows this city better than any of the players. So while statistically he's really not as strong as the players as a one-on-one as, say, Calrol the Vile would be, His thing is speed and being able to navigate through the city and know the places and know the traps. And he can go through these shanty towns really quickly and no one's going to bother him. However, a bunch of players going through there are going to have a really tough time wading through the crowds and beggars, and potential fights can break out there. So Droki's great because he's the uncatchable one. He's the rabbit, from Alice in Wonderland. He's the one who's always like 3 steps ahead of you. So you really have to be super smart to catch him. So he's a great villain there because he's got this sort of like time thing going on where he's just so quick. Cowell the Vile is very slow. He's a sustained villain. Droki, he's hitting the ground running super quick, and his whole thing is, I'm just going to be faster than you. So that's another great villain, and there you go. It's really easy to caricaturize him, and because I have a good caricature of who he is and a good idea of his statistics and different tactics he can use, it's going to be really easy for me to jump in there and role play him and give him more depth when he actually comes up in the story. A lot of being a DM is like priming characters so that they're going to be ready to go. Let's see. Other favorite villains. Well, not that one. Sorry, I don't know why I'm on there. Well, so there's a demon lord also in Out of the Abyss called the Demogorgon, who maybe you've heard of from some TV show. And he is a 2-headed monster where both of his necks are snakes and his heads are baboons. And he has like a reptilian body that stands upright and like long tentacles for arms, and he's about 30 feet tall. So he's a horror. He's an absolute horror. And he's a villain that is absolutely not meant to be fought until the end of the campaign. We're talking like months, maybe years of playing. I mean, he is like as big a villain practically as you can throw at a party early on. And the party first meets him when they're level 2, which is exceptionally low. That is exceptionally low for taking on anything, almost. So he comes out of the water after this ritual goes on in a small town. And the thing about him is he's got the 2 heads. So the 2 heads, each head has a different personality, and they scheme and plot against each other, even though they're both on the same body. One head is more of like a thinker, Machiavelli kind of guy, and the other one is just brutal, tenacious, primal, like will go for the threat immediately, instead of trying to play them. So the 2 of them are always sort of like reacting and going against each other, and it's kind of like, they'll even turn on each other in the middle of a battle and start chittering and yelling, and one saying, I should be doing this, another saying, I should be doing that. And that's the whole point of Demogorgon, is duality. It's, these 2 things. So the advantage of that is it lets me as a DM, if the party's getting in over their heads, I can use the conflict between the 2 heads to maybe give the party an opening to get out. Trying to manipulate him is a terrible idea. Trying to fight him is a terrible idea. I don't know. Those are just because he's a god. I mean, he's essentially a god. He's a little bit lower than a god. So you're never going to really be able to manipulate him, especially because you can't isolate the 2 heads. They're always in proximity to each other. Their whole thing is between the 2 of them. So he's this unbelievable villain. The party's got to flee from him, and really all he does is like rain destruction on this town while the party flees. So he's kind of a slow-moving villain in that way. So the key to using him is showing off his powers and also showing off how how he thinks. Like these two heads kind of each having an opinion about how to handle any situation, and use the incredible power that they have, which is staggering. I mean, from a stats standpoint, it's mind blowing to me to imagine how any party could confront this character. Like, it's just, he can freeze you in place with a maddening gaze. He can turn you on. His whole thing is his gaze. Either one of those heads can look at you, and then boom, like you lose your mind. You completely lose your mind. You lose control of your senses and your faculties. So he's terrific that way. I mean, he's like really juicy to use, and you only really get to use him in that one scene. So the more that like I'm able to like squeeze out like how he kills people, or the things that he's saying, like out to the crowd to intimidate people or to terrify them, or they are saying. And the more that I can make the two heads seem distinct and make that really clear that that's what he's about, because in a way he's a symbol, he's like God's a representative of like something totally innate, and they're a caricature in a ton of ways. But yeah, horror, fear, anger, and madness are like what that villain's going for. So that's what I crafted there. Let's see. Another villain that I created, or sort of, again, this is like from the book, but in the Tomb of Annihilation, there's a woman named Liara Portier who has a fort in the jungle where she controls a bunch of soldiers who go out into the jungle, who have claimed areas of the jungle for their land. She's basically a colonialist. And she's military and incredibly tough. I used Tywin Lannister as a basis for like her archetype. But yeah, incredibly tough, incredibly commanding, takes no BS, is totally straightforward with everything that she does, and is ruthless. She really is completely willing to do anything to anyone to secure her power and her reach out there on the island. So that's pretty easy to roleplay. She's just got to be smart in how she commands her soldiers and how she takes her actions in response to what the players do if they're in a conflict. And I worked hard when I was writing this campaign to set up a conflict, to seed a conflict in early, which is, I think, a pretty good technique. If you're writing and you want to create drama, seed conflicts. Because they're like between who the players are and who your villains are, or at least not even villains, but like the powerful people in your world. Maybe a character would be an NPC would be an ally for one player, but would be a villain for another, for reasons of politics or beliefs, or could be anything. It could be that they owe a debt to this person, and that changes things. That changes the relationship. So creating those relationships is really important. And so what I did with Liara was I had her be a representative of one nation, and then one of my players, when he was creating his character, made his character a representative of another nation. So who are both vying for control out here. And this is really far from both of their capitals, this jungle. So it's kind of the Wild West, and she's in a position of power. So if she sees that he's here and he's a valuable diplomat, it's possible that she would take advantage of that, capture him, hang him, ransom him. She's kind of at his mercy. And then also, because she doesn't know that he's here, he has a card to play too, which is like, how can I sabotage her operations while, not jeopardizing my overall mission here, which is a great conflict, because it's kind of cat and mouse, and it gives me a lot of room to let a story unfold, and to pick sides, and to work in the details of how the subterfuge is working out. Because as soon as his subterfuge is found out, I mean, it's curtains. If Tywin Lannister ever knew that Arya Stark was his cupbearer, I think that was in season 3. I mean, she would be dead, or hung or ransomed. It would be a different story. Um, so yeah, those are some of my favorite villains. Um, I didn't talk too much about like stupid villains. I feel like there are definitely stupid villains that you can make, like a hill giant. Oh, I read this one. This is a really funny one. Lady Guh, and she's this morbidly obese hill giant who is trying to please her god by eating as much food and becoming as fat as possible. So the fatter she gets, the greater she will be. So she's pretty funny. Sleepy. I guess I would caricaturize her as lazy and stupid and easily tricked. Um, Maybe also conniving in kind of like a witchy sort of way, you know, like knows how to manipulate people a little bit. Because she got queen. She became queen somehow, you know. So yeah, that's one. That's definitely a character I've never played her. Lady Ga. I don't even know how I would do her, because she's so big. Uh, well, I'm probably gonna think of a villain in like 5 minutes that I want to share, but this video's been going on for a while. So, thanks for watching, and God bless, my friends.